Hi, welcome to Relief Beyond Belief, Exploring the World of Natural Healing. I'm your host, Alexandra Barker, and today we're going to be talking all about shamanism. My guest is Sharon Van Ralt, who is a shamanistic practitioner, and she's going to just tell us all about it and why we might want to learn more about it and put some of these practices to use in our daily lives. Hi, Sharon. Thanks for coming.
Hi, Alexandra.
Making the drive out here. It's lovely to have you here.
Good to be here.
So for some of our viewers who may be completely unfamiliar with shamanism, what exactly are we talking about with shamanism?
Well, shamanism is an ancient spiritual practice, and it's been known to mankind over hundreds of thousands of years. And I think it's safe to say that we all come from a shamanic background. It's a way of believing in the world when you know that everything is alive and everything has spirit. And where we see it nowadays is in our First Nations people and indigenous cultures around the world. Okay. So we tend to link shamanism with those indigenous cultures. It really is a spiritual method of healing, of getting support from the universe, and of just being in contact.
And how long have you been a shamanic practitioner?
Well, I'm the last person I ever expected to see doing this kind of work or being involved in it. And how it happened to me was, I guess it's almost 20 years ago now that I started to get involved in it, became interested in it. And the interest came from two directions. First, I had two children in a row in my late 30s, and it kind of blew my worldview apart. And at the same time, I was doing some work in the Canadian Arctic, working with Inuit art, and interested in the shamanic elements of the Inuit art. And those two things came together. After my children were born, I got interested in pre- and perinatal psychology, and went to some workshops and met Stan Groff, who is a leading figure in transpersonal psychology, and talked to him about this interest in Inuit art, and he said, "You must know Michael Harner." I had never heard of Michael Harner, who is the founder of the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, and so when I came back home, I looked up his book, and then I ended up starting to take workshops, and discovered that I had a real home in this practice and in this learning.
And you're actually on the faculty now.
Yes, actually I am. I took many of the workshops, and I did some of the advanced training, and at the end of that training, which was, I guess, about 10 years ago now, I was asked to be on the faculty. So I teach for the Foundation for Shamanic Studies in Eastern Canada. There are teachers all over the world, and everybody has their area where they teach, and I've been doing that for 10 years and continue to love it.
And we're really quite fortunate in this area. A lot of people have to travel quite a great distance to be able to take some of these classes, but you teach very locally. You've taught workshops in Brighton.
That's right.
And currently teaching out of Campbellford at the Healing She.
That's right.
And so we'll put your information up, because there is a workshop coming up, and although you have to have the basic first, don't you?
That's right. I teach 5 weekend workshops, and there are more advanced workshops that are a week long and 2 week long, and then the 3-year program that I took. But of the 5 weekend workshops, you need to take the basic workshop first, and then there are 4 advanced ones that you can follow up with. And it's been so wonderful teaching in this area over these years. I find that there's a great deal of interest, and I've made a whole group of friends in the area. One of the nice things about how the foundation works is that sponsors are the ones who pull together the workshops in various areas, and so they know they're in the interest of the area. They do the work and make the contacts, and so it becomes a kind of a cooperation between sponsors in specific areas and me coming to teach.
Oh, that's nice. So you just show up and do the class. And, yeah.
So I get to see a lot of interesting places.
And meet some fabulous people, and there's wonderful things that you're teaching. I've taken a number of your courses as well, and they're always very illuminating and
well, the interesting thing about the foundation is what is taught in the foundation is core shamanism. Now, I've talked about indigenous practices, and many and the indigenous cultures, of course, have their specific practices. And what Michael Harner did years and years ago as an anthropologist in South America, he realized that in Western culture we're so far removed from those practices that we were adrift spiritually. And I think part of the reason I got attracted was that I was adrift spiritually too. What Michael did is he looked at indigenous cultures around the world, shamanic cultures, and he took out what was universal. And what is universal to all mankind, and that's what's taught in these foundation workshops. So it's applicable to everybody. Everybody has a sense of longing, a sense of connection with nature, a sense of wanting to return to a kind of a simplistic, not simplistic, but a simple way of living. And so what is taught in these courses are the techniques and the practices that are common to shamanic cultures all over the world, without any kind of cultural expression, because each culture has their own expression. So we don't pretend to do the same cultural practices that a specific culture will do. But these common principles really unite people.
And what are some of the just some of the basic aspects? Like you brought here a couple of beautiful drums here today. So maybe you'd like to touch on a little bit about how the drumming can actually facilitate journeying. And
one of the universal practices is shamanic journeying. And traditionally it's done with a drum, but there are different ways that you can do it to it. Sometimes it can be done with a rattle or with trance dancing or singing, but a monotonous beat carries you into a trance state, which is your shamanic state, where you go into what's called non-ordinary reality and meet spirit helpers, get healing, get information, and the things that help you in your life. So the drum is, again, it's a universal symbol. We use the drum at a specific drum beat to go into a shamanic trance. The rattle, the candle, the sage, these are things that you can find samples of in all indigenous cultures, and they really bring a sense of the sacred to what it is we're doing, and are of use to everybody. Even if you take a film can, put some rice in it, and rattle in your ear, you can make yourself you can put yourself into a kind of a shamanic state of consciousness, and that's what always intrigued me. I'm so admiring of indigenous cultures and the fact that many indigenous cultures are really bringing back their spiritual practices, and I didn't have the occasion to be exposed to them in order to learn with them. I have a sister who lives outside of North Bay, and she's done some wonderful training with indigenous people up there and practices in an Ojibwe way. But what I find is useful to me is the fact that we all have this birthright of spiritual connection.
And they are really wonderful when you participate in them, and you do get a lot of very good information through the journey. And although, I think sometimes we think, well, maybe it's just my imagination cooking this up, but really it's not. It's just your non-ordinary, as you say, reality, which is...
Yes, it's to put your ego aside and to move into what we can say that it's intuition, we can say that it's gut feeling, we can say that it's all kinds of things. Everybody has had the occasion to say, I think I made this up, it's all my imagination, and I think it's because we've moved ourselves away from believing what is something that can't be proved, that isn't written, that can't be seen. And the more we experience these states and the information that we can get, the synchronicities that happen, the way our lives open up, the more we realize that it's very real.
So what would be the most important thing, or what do you think draws other people to shamanism? Just that whole not really having a lot of spirituality in our lives, as you mentioned, or is there something else? Or what's the most important sort of gift that shamanism brings to the masses?
Sense of connection, I think. So many people, I hear over and over again when people come to the shamanic workshops, and either they say, oh, I've been doing this all my life and I didn't know what it was, or this really fills in the blanks. Many people say, I feel like I've come home, and you're coming home to kind of a spiritual center, to your own center, to your connection with everything. I've been really interested in quantum mechanics and the new physics, and I think that's mainly what brought me into this area. And the sense that science is now showing that we are molecular, we are a part of everything. All of these things that sound really off the wall when you hear them are scientifically proven now. And so to realize that we are connected with everything, that's the spirit of animism that shamanism espouses. Animism is when you know that everything is alive and everything has spirit, and that's what science is proving too. So it really reinforces my involvement.
It's really just a matter of opening your mind up to the possibilities, and with the aid of some of these useful tools. Now you brought some other examples of things that you would use, such as the sage in this lovely abalone shell.
Right.
So what would be the purpose to
Well,
purify?
this is a little bit of a North American indigenous expression using sage, but burning some kind of aromatic herb is a universal thing. You burn that, and the smoke, you wash the smoke over you, and it is intended to purify you and to make you clean and to help you move forward in a more pure space. The candle is a universal symbol of light. You know, just the fact that when you focus on the flame of a candle, that is the center of the universe. The rattle is something that is used for calling in spirits, and it can be used for shamanic journeying as well. I brought this little mask along. It was one that one of my daughters made years and years ago, and I was looking for things to bring today, and I came across these. I've just moved, and so everything is in boxes, and this was on the surface, and I thought, isn't that wonderful? She must have been 10 when she made that. And to me, it just came out of her and through her, and it looks so much like so many indigenous masks that we see. And so it just made me realize that, you know, we all have this birthright. We all are a part of spirit. And so many people coming home to spirit now through shamanism, through many other different avenues as well, are beginning to realize that.
So really you do tap into your creativity anytime you open and expand your mind. And
well, that's right. And when you think of some of the artwork that's associated with shamanic culture, some of the beautiful masks, and you think of the West Coast material, for example, and the wonderful costumes and dances, you know, the creativity is a part of the loving of spirit, the part of responding to spirit and honoring spirit. And I think the creative aspect of our lives is something, too, that in our busy world we seem to have moved away from. Creativity and spirituality really do go hand in hand.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you don't refer to yourself as a shaman, though. You call yourself a shamanic practitioner. So what would be the difference? Is that like a fine line?
Well, I think in shamanic traditions, anyone who calls themselves a shaman, shamans never call themselves shamans, and I think that if their practice works, if they're able to help other people and to improve life, improve their own lives, and do some healing work, then others may call them shamans. I think that it's just a word. We need to bring that notion of being the healer into all of our own lives, and if we have a shamanic state of mind, then the way we behave in the world is exemplary, is impeccable, and that's all you really need to say about it. So not calling yourself a shaman is just a normal thing.
And a way to keep the ego in check too, I would think, so that you don't kind of get all I am the shaman.
Well, when you see some miracles happen, it's easy to think that you had a hand in them, and all you are is just a conduit for the work of the universe.
Can you dig it?
Beyond Belief, and we're talking about shamanism, and my guest is shamanistic practitioner Sharon Van Ralt, and we're just about to talk about some of the other programs that you offer as well. I took some that are called the Fourfold Way. There was the Way of the Teacher, the Way of the Healer. I don't remember them all now. It was a few years ago.
Way of the Visionary, the Way of the Warrior.
Way of the Warrior, that's it. I took 3 out of 4. But yeah, so, and they aren't, specifically shamanistic programs, but they sort of touch on the same thing. What would be the difference?
Well, I started to tell you earlier that how I fell into this had to do with being interested in pre- and perinatal psychology, and after the birth of my children, and I got interested in the psychological process of gestation and birth, and that led me to become exposed to transpersonal psychology, because some of the people who came to conferences on pre- and perinatal psychology were in transpersonal psychology, and that's where I met Stan Groff, who led me to Michael Harner, and I also met a wonderful woman called Angelis Arian, who's a cross-cultural anthropologist, and I ended up studying transpersonal psychology as a result of this exposure, and did my thesis on shamanism and psychiatry, because I'm really interested in the bridging of things. And Angeles Arian was the chair of my thesis committee, and so I got to study with her quite a bit. She has done in the area of how to live the good life on a day-to-day basis what Michael Harner did on the spiritual level. She looked at indigenous cultures across the world, took out what was universal to them, and came up with a model that she calls the fourfold way. And it's a wonderful model. It talks about the four directions, those things that are universal to indigenous cultures around the world. So there's the way of the warrior, the way of the healer, the way of the visionary, and the way of the teacher. And each of these directions gives us something to learn about how we need to be, because we need to be in the center. So we need to be balanced in all of these four directions. And I was so helped in my own life by her work that I decided to put together some workshops, and those are the ones that you're referring to that I've offered, and I tend to offer them season by season, because each direction has a season involved with it. I find that they just balance so well the shamanic way of being. And we started to say before the break that sometimes your ego can get really heavily involved. If you do shamanic work and you see the results, it's hard sometimes not to get proud. And spiritual pride can be a great downfall.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so this balance of how to live properly on a day-to-day basis is, I think, essential, because then it helps to make put the shamanism in perspective, and allows you to maintain a sense of humility and reverence around the work. And I think that life is so amazing, the potential is so amazing. We tend to forget that we're living in the middle of a miracle. And life is a miracle, and that we have something that we can do to contribute to that, and that is being the very best that we can possibly be. And so the studies that I did in transpersonal psychology just reinforce that.
Let's just go back to this transpersonal psychology. What exactly is that?
Transpersonal psychology has been around for about 30 years, I guess, and there were a lot of professional people, doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, at some point thought there was something lacking in well-being, and it was the spiritual aspect. We talked about emotional well-being and physical and mental well-being, but spiritual well-being wasn't considered important, and so that was the focus. So it's called the fourth force, and it's built on humanism. It's built on the ideas of Jung, but it talks about the balance between the spiritual well-being and health, as well as physical, mental, and emotional. And so it draws from, you can say that shamanism is a transpersonal practice. Aikido is a transpersonal practice. So there are many things that pull in to become a transpersonal practice. And I studied in California at the Institute for Transpersonal Psychology with some really wonderful teachers. And I can see that it's spreading a little bit. At the time when I was doing this, which was, I guess, 15 years ago now, it didn't exist in Canada, but more and more there's an opening for it. I think where many people are opening to the need to find a spiritual link, and not necessarily a link that has to do with organized religion, because
Right.
sometimes organized religion can be disappointing for people, not giving them what they need. And that's why, for me, to go back to shamanism, I find it's like the rootstock. It's the rootstock of spiritual practices, of formalized religion. It's the rootstock of medicine, because many shamans were medicine men who healed with herbs and actually did physical healing. It's the rootstock of psychology and psychiatry. And of social work. So everything has gone through that process of coming from that core, and it's the core, I think, that is important and that many people are turning to.
Yeah, well, I think that's where the power is, and you get back to that, the real basic knowledge before it's become all distorted.
Yeah.
So
And the other thing, too, I wanted to mention is personal empowerment. As we've moved away from the rootstock and things have become more categorized and formalized, there's what Matthew Fox calls trickle-down grace. We're removed from direct connection to things, and that's the thing in shamanism that I find so wonderful, is that we can have direct connection with that source.
Yeah, even so we don't have to go through any organized religions or anything. We have to go
and there's
through some
nothing
other
wrong with organized
go-between.
religions, but in some sense, we're needing more than that.
Yeah,
And so that personal empowerment, I think, is a great need in our society today.
I agree. Okay. So, what are some things that you talk about just living kind of your best life? What are some examples of that that maybe our viewers might be able to incorporate into their daily lives? That's a big one, I guess.
Well, the power of the word is important. To be always careful of what you say, how you deliver messages. We're really good at making people feel guilty sometimes about things, or I don't know, just of the communication. We don't take responsibility for our communication, and so that's a good place to start. Power of the word. What you think. Allowing how sometimes your thoughts can really influence how you are in the world, and so if you can get yourself on a basis where well, what you think has to do with the beauty of the world and not with what's wrong with the world, the beauty of who you are, not what's wrong with you, same with those around you. And it requires practice. Everything we do, we can learn through practice, and we can unlearn things as well through practice. So it's a question of having a loving and caring attitude about everything.
And that's so similar, like when I had a Buddhist nun on here recently, we were talking about, watching our thoughts and kind of like how often are they going to the negative, either about ourselves or about other people, and, and now they're finding that thoughts can be calibrated and that higher kindness and lovingness are vibrated at a higher frequency than the baser, like guilt or anger, hatred, whatever, those ones that, operate a low one, and it's Wayne Dyer suggests that we can, positively affect 90,000 people with it by keeping in a state of positive thoughts and loving thoughts.
And
which
it's
is
amazing.
not
It's not just airy fairy, because when we talk about vibrations and we talk about the impulses and those kinds of things, and as I was saying, with science is proving that it does have an amazing effect. And so no one person is too little to make an effect, to have an effect.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can't sort of just get away with being all very loving on the outside, but in the privacy of your mind thinking, all kinds of nasty things about other people, because they're going to pick up on all that,
can't get away with
plus
it.
it hurts you more anyway, I believe that.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. Any other sort of quick pointers that other people might want to, other than, going to the library, checking out Michael Harner's book?
Well, there are lots of really good books on shamanism. Michael Harner is the first to say, once you've made contact with your spirits and you've learned to journey, or you have some kind of connection with them, you don't ever have to take a workshop. You can learn everything you need to from your spirits. Being in nature is an important thing. Respecting nature, respecting your own nature, having maybe a sacred place in your home. And people do this sometimes without even really realizing it. Sometimes we have more formalized altars, but if we have a little candle here, or a beautiful painting that we really like, it's just to allow that energetic flow, of sort of a peaceful flow to inhabit us, and to take the time, if we're feeling out of sorts, to get centered again. When we talk about shamanism, we're talking about a practice that has drums and rattles and all of that kind of thing. But to me, the shamanic impulse is more how we are on a daily basis in our lives, and how we respond to the fact that we are animated. We live in an animated world, and everything is alive around us.
So basically it would be being impeccable with your word, thought, and deed, I would think. I could probably throw the three of them in there. Probably eating well, looking after our bodies in the best way with exercise and nutrition and proper sleep.